DJ, thank you so much for being here today. And the whole goal of these chats is basically to have casual conversations with people that I know who may be able to share something interesting that other people can learn about.
Well, thank you for being here, Arjun. We've been friends for a long time, so I
We
think this
have,
should be easy.
we have, man. I
Yeah.
think it would actually be a good point to start on. How did we meet, man?
My first memory of you, we were like sitting on a table. I think I was like in front of like two people, two or three people, and you were sitting next to like two or three or maybe more people. And then we were on the same table and we crossed eyes, and then we like I think we just joined groups and everyone was just talking to one another. What's your first memory?
I just remember seeing a shy, thin boy in the corner, and I just wanted to be friends with him. I was like, wait, this guy seems really interesting. I'd love to get to know him better. And the rest is history. We actually became very, very good friends, and we met in Perth, didn't we? At our
We did,
residential
yeah.
dorm called St. Catherine's College, which was part of the University of Western Australia.
Yeah. Well, thanks for throwing me under the bus with the shy part, but
Now you're very confident, so it's chill. So tell me,
all
bro,
right, thanks.
you're for those that are actually watching this, I think it would be interesting to talk a little bit about your cultural background because I learned a lot about your country and the heritage of your country through you. So this would be interesting for other people to know.
Yeah, I guess that our country didn't really change a lot for 50 years since its independence in 1975. And now all of a sudden, if people are looking at the news, they're seeing that a lot is going on there. And basically, there's been elections recently, 9 of October, and and people are disputing that it was an unfair election. And I think that everyone is now starting to wake up to the realization that if we want to continue having a democratic country, we needed to do something about it. But it's a contentious topic because anyone who talks about the government is already automatically worrying for themselves because
And for context, you're
people
from
are scared.
Mozambique. Just for people listening, DJ is from Mozambique.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a complicated situation because anyone who talks about the government is kind of scared for themselves.
Mhm.
And there's many examples of where film producers in Mozambique have either been prosecuted or they're afraid of publishing anything they say against the government, for example.
Mhm.
Which areas would you like to know about Mozambique?
I guess what's interesting for me is the main language in Mozambique, which is something I learned from you, is Portuguese, right? And what's the history
Mhm.
behind um, Portuguese being the main language? I believe it was a former colony, wasn't it?
It was, yes, Mozambique and Angola were former Portuguese colonies.
Mhm.
Um, and I think one reason they decided to keep the language after independence in 1975 was because they needed a way of uniting the entire country. Um, and so they decided to use Portuguese as a vehicle language to communicate between all the provinces and make sure there was a fluency of communication. And it's actually impressive that when you visit Mozambique, you will find Mozambique spread everywhere.
In what sense?
Everyone speaks Portuguese, and it's surprising how common it is and popular the language is.
Okay. And prior to that, like you're saying, different provinces spoke maybe different dialects of local languages, maybe tribal languages or whatever, and the Portuguese language kind of united the entire country in a way, similar to, I guess, India, right?
Yeah, there's still the official languages there, and we have three official languages. which is Ronga, sorry, Xixangana, and Portuguese. And Ronga and Xixangana are still spoken in the southern part of Mozambique,
Mhm.
but it's a relatively small uh, geographical area compared to the entire country. So the main language out of all of the languages is Portuguese.
Okay. And what are the main, like, you can say, what are the economic drivers for the country? Is it mostly service-based, manufacturing, labor? What does that look like?
So the Mozambique economy is mostly, I think, 80% or above based on agriculture. Recently, these last few decades, they did find some new natural resources like natural gas, which are estimated to be worth a lot of money, but they still haven't been properly utilized. But until recently, we can say that 80% of the country is just agrarian based, unlike European cities, which are mostly service based, right?
Yeah, yeah. So they have, I'm guessing, a lot of exports in grain or
We have exports in coal, in finished food products. Um, we also export sand, heavy sands.
well,
Um, and I think, well, a lot of variety of plants and tree plantations, woods, and I think rubber, if I'm not mistaken.
okay, even rubber.
Rubber, I'm not too sure, but everything else that I mentioned, yes.
Okay. So it seems like there's a lot of obviously maybe natural resources and things as well. I'm guessing you like my understanding is it's rich in
Yes.
arable land. There's a lot of land that can be cultivated for crops and stuff. But I'm guessing you also have some natural resources with all the land that you have.
But yes, I would say that we don't have like we don't make use of precious metals in the same way as regional countries do, because we don't really, except for precious stones like rubies, we don't really extract a lot of precious metals like gold and diamond. Obviously, there's a small bit. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 3 million euros annually of gold, for example, is extracted from Mozambique,
Wow.
and relatively small amounts of some other elements like platinum and diamonds, but very small compared to other regional countries.
Okay. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just testing my geography. I think to the south of Mozambique is South Africa. West, is it
Yes.
Botswana?
It's not connected to Botswana, where we have six neighbors, including Zimbabwe. To the west, there would be Swaziland right above South Africa,
Uh,
and then there's Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Tanzania.
okay. Tanzania would be to the north.
Yes, to the north. And there's
Okay.
also Mali, which is northwest
Northwest of. And I thought
of
Mali and
Mozambique.
Mauritania.
Mali is a small country.
Okay, I thought Mali and Mauritania were like northwest of Africa.
Maybe it's not Mali, but they have the same name. Well, here it is. It's
Oh,
called Malawi. I'm so sorry
Malawi,
about that.
Malawi. Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes
I
sense.
mixed up Mali with Malawi.
Yeah, because I know Mali and Mauritania are like, I think close to Algeria, Morocco, that side. So you've got a couple countries, and who are the closest allies of Mozambique? And after that, who are the trading partners?
I would say Mozambique is very diverse in terms of alliances because there's the PALOP with the Portuguese speaking alliance countries, which share the common Portuguese language. We have SADC, Southern African Development Community, I think, which also shares some, I would say, security and export and import interests. But I would say South Africa is one of our most dependent allies because South Africa exports, I would say, 80% of the food that Mozambique feeds itself. So it's very
Wow,
dependent on the South African agricultural sectors.
wow. So there's a very heavy reliance on South Africa. So obviously that makes a tremendous difference. What about the racial breakdown of people from Mozambique? Because I understand that there are some people who are of European ancestry in Mozambique, if that's correct.
We did have until 1975 a big share of Portuguese citizens. However, with the independence, I would say the majority went back to Mozambique. And at this point, Mozambique is a very mixed country. I would say one of the most mixed countries in the region.
Really?
Um, yes, it's actually one of the surprising things about Mozambique. One would be the language, as we mentioned, because almost everyone speaks Portuguese. Another would be the presence of mixed cultures.
What are the main mixed cultures?
I would say mixed between European and African countries. There's a lot of Arabian and Asian um, mixes in Mozambique. It's just a very diverse country, especially in centers like Beira and Maputo, the capital, and other big cities.
Okay. That's pretty fascinating. I think because I've lived in Mauritius for a while. I lived in South Africa, and both of them are also no, I've lived in Mauritius and visited South Africa, and both of them are quite diverse. South Africa has an Indian population, a white population, and also the local African population, and Mauritius has a lot of people of Indian descent, and also Sino-Mauritian, so people of Chinese descent. So Africa, I think a lot of people don't realize it's actually highly diverse culturally, ethnically. Which and to hear that this is the same with Mozambique is fascinating.
Yeah.
And what about with like foods? Like with
Yeah, food, the same would be with foods. We are very, very diverse as well. Um, we have foods from every background, I would say. And there is a bit of pride in the local African foods. We usually, but it's also true that like main restaurants and expensive restaurants don't really incorporate African dishes as much as one would expect. And
okay,
there's a lot of internationalization, globalization of the foods in the big centers.
what are some popular dishes that you'd recommend for someone who's visiting Mozambique for the first time?
There's galinha zambeziana, which is like a chicken cooked with the coal and coconut sauce.
Wow.
There's like matapa, which is like African stews made out of um, leaves. There's lots of seafood, um, prawns, fish, lobster. There's a lot of variety, and it's actually really good food.
And just to understand, for those that don't know, we met in Australia. Then after Australia, you went overseas. So what happened? I think did you leave Australia in 2018?
November 2018.
November
Yes.
2018. So are you able to like briefly talk about what happened after that? How was your journey? How did you progress, and where are you up to now?
My journey actually changed a lot. Initially, I went to Australia to study environmental science, and I actually watched some of your interviews before this, and similar to the people being interviewed, I had similar interests of staying in an English-speaking country for the sake of not having to learn a new language.
Uh-huh.
Um, and Australia was one option. I was also considering New Zealand, but my dad actually had a friend in Australia, and I went to New Zealand first, and I was applying for some universities in New Zealand, but on my way back to Mozambique, my dad told me to pass by Perth because he had a friend there. So I was accommodated at our friend's house, and then I sought UWA, and I made my application. But after Australia, um, I went back to Mozambique initially, and I was unsatisfied with my with the progress I had made in Australia. For obvious reasons, I couldn't pass my programs, and I also had some medical situations that intervened with my career. So I decided it was time for a new start. And I traveled to initially to Portugal, and then once I was there, I found the program that I was interested in Barcelona. So I changed course and I moved from environmental science to humanities. The area of humanities and the program I went to was international relations. So I ended up doing a bachelor's in global studies, and that opened many doors to what could be other options in my life, including diplomacy and consular and embassy assistance.
Yeah.
So where I stand now is someone who has finished his bachelor's, and last week I applied for something that the Ministry of Foreign it's called the Minister the Foreign. Uh, I would have to translate from Portuguese. That's why I can't really say right now. But it's like vacancies that have opened up for assistants at consular work representing the Portuguese embassy, basically.
Okay. And this is where is this based?
So in the application you had to choose like different positions, and I ended up choosing 32 positions.
Oh
So
wow.
that means that it's all over the place, literally in almost every continent.
Okay. Any in Australia or?
I think there was an option for Australia, but I decided to stick around Europe. I did include Beijing, Shanghai, and I also included New York
Mhm.
uh, because, yeah, I mean, I want to stick around Europe for the reason that I'm now based in Portugal, and I also have to continue with medical appointments. So I don't want to stray too far away from the base where I can get some medical assistance.
Okay. Okay. I see. So tell me a little bit about Angola because my understanding is you also have ties to Angola. Um, what is that like?
I'm actually in Angola right now.
Okay.
My mom was born here. My grandfather was born here, and my dad met my mother in a work stay while he was in Angola. And then my dad convinced my mom to move to Mozambique, and me and my brother were born in Mozambique. But my mom was, and everyone from my mother's side of the family have relations either to Angola or only to Portugal. Um, and I actually don't have that many family members in Mozambique. So I would say that Angola is just as important as Mozambique is to my family history.
Whoa.
And Angola is not is actually very quite similar to Mozambique.
In what
It's a
sense?
little bit it's a it's somewhat in the same region, similar history. It's a bit richer in terms of natural resources and the utilization that the country has made. They're very, for example, rich in oil production. And President Biden was in Angola 1 week ago to
Oh.
discuss oil deals.
Okay, is that the one where he fell asleep?
I think he does that in all of them, right?
Okay. Yeah, I think I did see that. Yeah, he was somewhere in Africa. Okay. That's pretty interesting. And so for the near future, you kind of discussed your plans about kind of looking into diplomacy and looking at missions where you're kind of representing, I guess, the Portuguese um, embassy. Um, that's my
Yeah.
understanding. And what are your long-term goals?
In my specific case, I can't go back to Mozambique. Well, I could, but my because of my health, I would rather stay now in my future in Portugal because there the national um, health takes provides a lot of support for me.
Mhm.
So that's where I see myself in the next years. My life goals are just to have a stable employment and start buying land or an apartment and growing from there. I'm not too ambitious, but I would rather keep a stable career within the next years and also be exposed to the work industry so that I can have a fulfilling life every with work every day and meet people that way.
Beautiful. Sounds like some beautiful goals that you have set out for yourself. And I see you flourishing. In terms of what you studied, maybe you could just tap into that a little bit. What you studied, the experience of studying in Spain, and if you'd recommend it.
Um, I would I would definitely recommend international studies to anyone because unless someone is absolutely sure of what they want to do with their studies, there might be many cases like someone like me who is not 100% sure of what they can do with their studies. So international relations is perfect because my university incorporated 5 out of the 8 departments within the faculty of like law, economics, history, communication. Um, so it's really a very open degree and it's very fulfilling because you do get to experience a little bit of all of every department. So your university experience is, I would say, well utilized because you get to meet a diverse range of faculties
Mhm. Sounds
and
beautiful.
interests.
And you'd say that living in Barcelona was a pretty good experience overall in terms of life there.
Yes, Barcelona was something new for me, something radically different from Mozambique and from my past experience living in South Africa, Mozambique, and Australia. So I did get to be exposed to that side. And Barcelona in particular is quite interesting because there's a lot of international students. Um, I went to a university called Pompeu Fabra, which is a public university, and they have many exchange programs. And I also participated in an exchange program that was compulsory to all the students doing international relations. I still think a lot of environmental science because I do have an affinity to agriculture and worrying about the environment. So that's still definitely one of my main passions. But the exchange that I did, I was initially going to go to Taiwan because part of the international relations program that they do, you have to also do a compulsory language out of five. So that includes Arabic, Chinese, French, um, and Russian. And I chose Chinese, simplified Mandarin.
Oh wow, what was that
So
experience like?
that was a very profound experience because the program, it's an entire year. So it's 3 trimesters. And you're exposed to both the culture and the language of China. So that was very interesting. So I was going to do my exchange in Taiwan, Taipei University, but the embassies closed down because of COVID. So they were not emitting any short-term study programs. So me and 3 other students who were doing China, who were going to China for exchange, we decided to send a formal request to our university asking to change our mobility program. And so I saw Istanbul on the list and I decided to apply to Turkey. And I actually went there for 5 months.
Wow, you've been all over the place.
At this point, I could say I have been, yeah, exposed a lot.
Wow, that seems rather fascinating. And in terms of Chinese, would you say you're at what level of proficiency are you at?
Simplified Mandarin is a very interesting language, but it's also quite complicated. There are like it's a nice language because they use the same characters to so you can build on the progress that you've made. So sometimes when you're like studying a set of characters, when you're starting to progress to more proficient level, you still use the same characters as the ones you've learned before. So you build on the progress. And that's what I find very interesting of Mandarin. But I would still say that after 1 year, I'm still at a quite elementary level because getting to really speak to someone takes quite a while of effort.
Mhm.
But I did learn how to greet, how to count, um, how to do like very basic purchasing. Yeah.
Like purchasing a computer and a laptop and stuff like that.
Yeah, we simulated in our classroom like buying a t-shirt at the store, for example. So we
Okay.
had to like ask for the price, how much is this? And then negotiate the price.
Negotiate. Oh, okay. So like that's a proper conversation if you're kind of having a back and forth negotiating. It's not just a simple how much I'll pay for it. Here it is. It's like you're speaking a little bit more.
It was quite interactive in
Okay.
the classroom.
Fascinating. So we've talked about Mozambique. We've touched a little bit on Angola. We've talked about your time in Australia. We've talked about your future plans and also your long-term plans. And we've also talked about student life in Barcelona. So it seems like we've covered quite a bit in this short span of time. DJ, I think we might be nearing the end of this conversation. However, at the very end, I normally ask people one question, and that is, what piece of advice would you give for any person who's watching this or who comes across this video? And it can be a very simple piece of advice or something that you find very profound, but one piece of advice from the top of your head.
I would say that my one piece of advice right now would be to stick through to your plan until the very end, because and also one quote that I've learned from one of my university professors was learn how to rest, not to quit, because we can always rest on our way to achieving our goals, but once we quit, we can't go back. And there were many times where um, I was unsure of where I was heading towards, and I could have just decided to give up on everything and um, and quit on life. But like big rewards in life come when we stick to our plans and we see them go to fruition. So um, we should usually like try to at least reach the end of our goals before we make drastic changes to whatever we our ambitions are.
Beautiful piece of advice. And I think there's something really profound in not quitting, but sometimes just taking a rest from things and still coming back to that goal, but maybe you come back a little more rejuvenated, a little more energy, and a little more insight, so how you can tackle that goal even stronger or more head on. So I think that's a beautiful piece of advice.
Mhm.
DJ, thank you so much for being here today. I'm sure that anyone who comes across this video will learn so much, and that's basically the whole goal of these short chats. I wish you nothing but the best, and I hope you have an amazing time in Angola, and I'll catch you soon.
Thank you, Arjun. We'll keep in chat.
Thanks for being here, brother.
See you, my friend.